Happy New Year, everybody. This is Jared from the Madprops Boat Works channel. That was hard to say because I haven't said it in a while. So, as you guys may have noticed, I've been kind of gone for a while. I apologize for that. With Christmas having come and gone, had a lot of stuff to do. Had a lot of stuff to do around the house. Finishing up some gifts for the family and building a fireplace. You know, normal stuff. So now that Christmas is gone and all that stuff's out of the way, I can finally get back on the boat. I know it sounds like I'm always coming up with an excuse that I'm not working on it, but stuff happens. So, as you saw there, I have actually started working on the electrical stuff. That wasn't the original plan. However, now this is going to be a little bit of a story. So one thing kind of led to another, which led to another, which led to me doing electrical work. So to go over what has kind of happened in the background that you guys have not seen since my last video is I got my bellows installed, all that kind of stuff, and the engine is in and got it aligned. At least I thought I got it aligned. And when I went to put the outdrive on, I did all this so I could get the boat out of the garage so we could have the garage for the winter. So I went to put the outdrive on and the engine wasn't perfectly aligned. It went in most of the way and then the input shaft kind of got jammed up. And any of you guys that have ever dealt with an outdrive in an engine that's not aligned perfectly can feel my pain. It's not fun. So once it kind of got stuck in there, I was not getting it back out because I used the old size 12 persuasion to try and get it to go on, which is never a good idea. I should have known better. But it got stuck, so in order to get it off, I need to put the trim rams on, which were rebuilt. So I finally mounted the trim rams to the outdrive and the boat. And in order for the trim rams to work, I need power. In order to have power, I need the trim pump. So I put the trim pump in. You can see where this is going. The trim pump was in, but you can't use that unless you have electricity. So there's the issue. So I needed to use the trim rams to get the outdrive back off, and I'll do a video on that so you guys can see how I do that. But basically, short story is I need power. So jump ahead, putting batteries in the boat, and a couple other things on the list here that I want to do in this video. So I took the old cables out of the boat when I got it and just kind of put them aside, assuming I would use them again. This is what I took out. I've cleaned them all up and started looking at them and realized that this is only 6-gauge cable. If you look at a lot of charts, it's not going to recommend 6-gauge for a starter wire for anything over like a foot or so. And where my batteries are and with the switch I'm using, it's going to be closer to like 8 feet. So I ended up ordering some of this 2-gauge cable. And this stuff's really nice. It's actually like welding and battery cable, so it's lots of strands, real flexible. It's got a nice EPDM rubber jacketing on it. It's real chemical resistant and stuff like that. So also came with these nice crimp terminals and heat shrink, so glad I did it. And it came with the red and the black for positive and ground. So I got those cables prepped, and I just needed a little bit more to go from the battery to the switch. When I say the switch, I mean this. So this is a Perco battery switch, which allows you to select 2 batteries either individually or both combined, or turn them all off for storage or whatever. And the cable is just hooked to the back of this. So I need to get this installed in the boat, and I decided I'm going to put this under the back seat. So instead of having to get into the engine compartment to access this, which would be the most convenient in terms of battery cable, because I could put this right near the battery, which is where it was when I got the boat. I wanted to be more accessible so I don't have to tell everybody get off the bench seat, so I can lift up the back into the engine compartment under the sun deck and reach back for it and deal with all that. So I'm just going to put it under the rear seat, like the pads on the seat, which are 3 separate pieces, so I can just lift it up, access it, and we're good to go. And that'll keep it out of the weather for the most part and stuff like that too. So the downside of that is that means I need some longer pieces of cable. The other thing I'm going to be installing is this Blue Sea Systems fuse block with a negative bus. So this is a 6 fuse block, ATC style fuse, and it also has a positive and negative bus on it. So that'll allow me to run a longer cable, which I may use this 6-gauge if it's long enough. It might not be, so, but I don't even need that big a cable. I'd probably get away with like 8-gauge or something like that. Run that to the positive on this from the battery, and that'll allow me to run this to my amplifier what else? The bilge pump, really anything else that needs power, fused power, that is not part of the main Mercruiser harness and stuff like that. So just make it a little bit cleaner, and also more importantly, everything will be fused. So that's the plan with that. This kit also came with some extra wire that I don't even know why I'm telling you that. But yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at with the boat. Once this electrical stuff is done, I'll kind of go back and show you the other stuff. But ooh, a couple more things. In terms of cable management, wanted to touch on that. So I've been thinking about some of this stuff for quite a while, like while I was taking the old boat apart, trying to figure out how I want to handle stuff moving forward, because one of the biggest issues I saw with that boat was they did from factory a pretty good job of cable management, but the one thing that always bothered me was on the zip ties they use a lot of zip ties that had the holes in them that you can use screws to attach, which is a great idea, I like that, but not in a structural part of the boat. So there's lots of these zip ties with stainless steel screws going into the transom plywood, into the stringers, etc. So basically all they're doing is making a penetration into a structural part of the boat, giving an entry point for water. So I knew that I would not be putting it back that way, so for quite a while I've been looking at different options on how I'm going to do the cable management and kind of attaching things to route them neatly and stuff like that. So I kind of have two plans here. One is to kind of do what they did, but not in structural areas. So I did buy some cable ties. I'll put a picture in what they look like. There's different versions of them, but I bought some cable. Oh wait, no, threw them away. I bought some that have a little mounting ear on them that you can put a stainless steel screw through and attach the cable tie to wood, whatever. Just be mindful where you're screwing it into. And another example is for where I mounted the trim pump and the batteries. If you noticed in the video, it actually is raised up a little bit. So I actually purposely glassed in kind of a sacrificial piece of plywood for the battery boxes to screw into and the trim pump to screw into. So yes, I did drill holes in the floor in those areas, but those holes are into a sacrificial piece of plywood, which are glued and laminated on top of the deck. So it didn't actually screw into the deck itself, so there's no path for water to get underneath and kind of rot from the bottom up like these old boats do. The other plan of attack, I guess you could say, that I have is to use these things. I don't know how good the adhesive is on them. This is the brand I bought. I don't know. There's a bunch of different companies that make them, but it's basically got this 3M double-sided adhesive tape on the back of it. I may do a test where I stick this on a piece of fiberglass. Now, if you're going to use this, either way you do this, you'd want to scuff up the fiberglass, or the gel coat, I guess I should say, where you're going to stick it and clean it with acetone, make sure there's no residual wax or PVA or whatever you used, just to make sure you get a good bond. But I may do a test between this and using some 3M 5200 to mount this, just to see what's stronger. It doesn't have to be strong enough to hold up something, but it's basically just, you don't want it popping off. So I may do a test with that, but this is the plan in running stuff on the transom and stringers and stuff like that. So this one battery cable right here, to go from the switch where I'm going to put it to go back to the starter, is going to go right along the front of, or the rear of the back seat, and then it's going to turn and go right along the transom back to the starter. So I plan on using these mounts, and also those same mounts I can use for the bilge pump wires and anything coming from kind of down below the engine. So that is the plan of attack. Zip ties with adhesive mounts in places that I can't screw into, and then just the regular screw style in places that don't really matter. And I did go out and buy like 2 boxes of 100 pieces of stainless steel screws, like real short ones, so it doesn't poke through the 1/2-inch plywood. So I think I'm pretty much ready to go with that. So I just wanted to mention that before I forgot. So with all that rambling on, let's go out in the boat and get the installed. Alright, so we are in the boat. Let's get all this wiring installed and on to the next thing. So the crazy thing is it's January 11th today, and yes, it's windy, but the wind is out of the south, which means wearing shorts. What? Crazy. So can't pass up that opportunity to work on the boat. So just a reminder, got both batteries in. I do have the ground wires hooked up to the block, kind of ganged them together here. And then I'm going to run my positive wire from the starter and deep cycle battery up to the battery switch, which is going to go right there after I clean up the mess. And then we'll get the fuse block installed, amplifier installed, get my trim pump wires and all that stuff in. So let's get at it. Okay guys, that is going to do it for this one. I'm going to wrap this one up here and call this part 1 of 2 because I don't think you want to watch me do this anymore, to be honest. And the weather has gotten kind of gross in the last week or two, so I know in some of those clips you saw me wearing shorts and it was in the 60s and super nice out. But since then things have changed a little. Now we have snow on the ground and ice, and it's pretty gross. So the main objective of what I got done in this video was to basically get the main power components, like the larger gauge wire to the starter and the batteries installed, and very specifically the trim pump wires so I could power the trim pump. So I did do that. The trim pump has been bled, flushed out, and I was able to use it to get the drive back off, and I plan on doing a video on that to show you guys how to remove your drive correctly, because there's a very good way and a very bad way to do that. So with that being said, the plan now is to kind of shift gears into some other stuff, mainly things I can do inside. And one of those is what's behind me here, which is I'm going to be working on some reupholstery stuff. So this is kind of new to me, so I decided to start easy. I'm going to do some panels, side panels, some of these types of things that don't involve a whole lot of sewing. We're going to shift gears into this here in the next few videos, so that'll probably occupy me for a little while over the winter while the weather's cold. So if you guys are interested in this and want to see anything specifically, leave some comments down below and let me know how detailed you want me to get into it. I'll admit right now that I am not a sewer or upholsterer by any means, so I'm kind of learning as I go on this. Again, look for that coming down the road here, the upholstery stuff and the electrical. Again, I'm sorry, the second half's going to be out in the future at some point. So thanks for sticking around though while I was kind of radio silent there for a while, for the last month and a half or so, but I'm going to try and keep pumping stuff out here now that Christmas is past. So thanks again for hanging out with me, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.